I want to get into Brandon Marshall. And the reason why I want to get into Brandon Marshall is because, and this is kind of like the athlete day. This is the day that we talk about everything related to money, bag fumbling, John Morant, John Moran, John Morant. And I want to get into Brandon Marshall in a recent interview that he did, and that he kind of broke down the whole idea behind how a lot of these guys think. And they're very much like you and I, regular, everyday people, right? And there's this misconception that just because they famous or just because they were NBA players or NFL players or NHL players or they got some level of visibility or IG models, that they're automatically going to be successful when it comes to the things that they celebrate or they do the most when it comes to social media. Y'all see a lot of these I Am Athletes, the Pivot podcast, and a lot of this type of stuff. And if you are a part of the Patreon, Eric Hart, thank you for the super chat. I'm going to be reading that shortly. If you're a part of the Patreon, then you also understand that looking at everything, shout out to Khalil Racing, I appreciate you reading that shortly. You understand that it's a difference between looking at it from a business perspective and looking at it from an emotional perspective. And breakups happen all the time. Business happens all the time. If you're not looking at everything from a business perspective, then you're looking at it short-sighted. So I want to get into this recent clip of Brandon Marshall going into and having a conversation specifically about his journey in being a content creator, YouTuber, and trying to do business with people that he was cool with. Make sure you hit a like for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. I'm definitely going to be reading super chats very, very shortly. And hopefully I'm continuing to add value into you guys' lives. And you find this to be incredibly entertaining and you subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it.
I Am Athlete. Mm-hmm. The origins to where it is now. We got to talk about the split.
Yep.
We got to address the elephant in the room.
I was just finna end the show. I was finna end the show, but
we ain't gonna be messy. But you know, I will say this: we ain't gonna be messy. But Fred is on his way over here, just so you know. So watch what you say.
Right.
Me, Marsh.
If you talking to somebody, they thinking about it, they contemplating what to say, trying to say the right thing. So you going back to what Ricky said. You say the stuff that you really want to say.
We go back to mental. Let's go back to mental health, and it's not even mental health. It's just about, you know, just how to be a decent human being. Mm-hmm. You got to take accountability.
What you trying to say?
Look yourself in the mirror. We talked about self-assessment, right? Mm-hmm. So this is what I would do in retrospect. Mm-hmm. Had a vision. Mm-hmm. Literally a couple of houses down before you moved in the neighborhood. I'm sitting out there on my porch, chanting crowd.
Not all of the black people moving into the neighborhood. Might be time to move out of the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying?
We're sitting there. And he was one of my all-time favorite teammates, one of them. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, damn, let's start a podcast. Why? Because during the time you had the Stephen A. Smiths of the world, like, streaming live from their cribs with AirPods in.
Right.
You know, grainy, look bad. I was like, yo, we could potentially sell a show.
Right.
So I'm like, boom, Chan, like, would you do this? Yeah. It's like, you think Fred T would do? Tomorrow I'm going to pull up on.
So, from the very beginning, they looking at the competition and they said, listen, I think we can create a show that we can wind up selling. So that flies in the face of what a lot of y'all really advocate for and y'all say that is needed with regard to a lot of these content creators. And from the very beginning, he's telling you the goal was not necessarily just to create content. The goal was to make money. And their objective in making money is not ownership. So when you see a lot of these different people that come on these platforms and they giving y'all these interviews and they giving y'all this game and so on and so forth, and they keep talking about ownership. Nobody gives a fuck about ownership. The only thing that they care about is the same thing that they're investing for, which is to ultimately get a big bag on the tail end of it. Most people, right, including the Brandon Marshalls and whoever it is that's on these platforms, Their goal is to get a big bag. They want to sell the show. They want to ultimately divest themselves, and they have an exit plan when it comes to a lot of these platforms that y'all then get emotionally invested in. So when you see the $1 million worth of game and then they go over to Barstool Sports, or you see the what's the other one? Drink Champs, and then they wind up ending up on Revolt, right? These guys are not necessarily looking for ownership. They're looking to ultimately divest themselves and get out of these platforms, because it's not necessarily about the value. It's about how much money that they can make as a result of divesting themselves from the show. They want to sell the platform. That was the goal that he's telling you from the very beginning.
Fred T. He said, yeah, go holler at him. Jump in my golf cart, drive over. Fred T, boom. Yeah, I'll rock with you. Same thing with Reggie Wayne. In that moment, right, I'm leaning on friendships. What should have happened in that moment, in retrospect on me, yo, here's a offer, here's a contract. Let's button this up from the beginning.
Right.
Right? A season go by, we didn't sell a show. Had my guys showing up twice a month, 2 hours a pop, just creating content.
Right.
Sometimes they come, sometimes they won't. Like you'll see if you go back and watch that, sometimes other people was plugging in, but they were showing up for the most part.
When you say they, who you talking about? They go to lawyer. When
Channing,
you say they,
Fred, Reggie,
Okay.
right? There's a couple shows where, the schedules didn't align.
right.
But everybody was doing their part. Everybody was bought in. Right. I'm working it Monday through Friday. I'm investing the money.
Right.
Like you investing all the money.
All the money.
Okay.
Right.
All the money. Right.
So when he's creating this platform, right, the I Am Athlete platform, he's investing all of his time, all of his money, and he feels as though he has more to lose with regard to the objective and the goals that they're trying to build for this platform in a general sense, right? And so he's not even talking about it from a talent perspective. He's talking about it just purely off of, listen, my goal is to build this platform so that I can ultimately sell it to a bigger network, and then I can do business as a result of it and get this big bag, right? And Surf, you saying it in the chat, a lot of YouTubers sell their channels or contract them out. That is a big thing that a lot of people are not talking about, right? It's a lot of people that have investors or other people that have equity stakes, or they wind up selling the majority of their platforms off over into, because now it's an IP. Now we talking about content. Now we talking about, see, I own 100% of everything that I've ever done. Every single interview, right? Which, if you're a part of the Patreon, and you know that in the earlier Patreon and mastermind sessions, before I even started to show y'all what it is that I'm making off of a lot of this content, right? Because I show my back end, I show what it is that I generate. I started breaking down and highlighting how it's not necessarily just about the money. It's also about the ownership, because it's a lot of different ways, if you understand the business of content creation, that you can license out the content. You want to be looking at it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. If you have children and you want to pass something over, you can start to pay attention to it from that perspective. So it's a lot of things that go into what success looks like when it comes to creating content, but it also depends on what your long-term goal is with regard to how it is that you're trying to monetize this thing. It's like a house, right? Their goal was to build the house and then be able to flip it. They want to flip the house. It's flippers, it's wholesalers, it's long-term landlord investors, it's REITs. It's a lot of different things and a lot of different ways in which you can make money off of real estate. My goal when it comes to content creation, when it comes to real estate, when it comes to anything from a business perspective, is to ultimately own it forever. Why? Because I want to be BlackRock. You don't know nothing about BlackRock. We'll get into that tomorrow, right? I want to be Vanguard. You don't know nothing about Vanguard. We'll get into that tomorrow. I want to be Fox. I want to be Netflix. Netflix realized at some point that it wasn't enough to just license out the content. Then they started creating their own original content, and it would cost them a lot of money up front. And they don't measure the metrics by how much they making per month. They measure the metrics by how interested the people are in the content, right? So when they say, okay, listen, we gonna give $40 million over to Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock in order to create this special, right? They're investing in people wanting to be interested in that content for the rest of their lives. When Disney went and bought all of the assets that they needed in order to be able to start the Disney Plus channel and network, how valuable did that content become? Let's continue.
Right, because the just off a handshake was
shout out to Marcus
when we sell a show, we split it evenly. Right, I started learning. Right, Showtime looked at me. I love you, Brandon. You've been on our network for 7 years, but the other guys, not. I don't know. Right, Channing.
Make sure y'all subscribe, hit a like for the YouTube. Look at this fucking production that we got going on over here. Make sure y'all subscribe, hit a like for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel. If you want to, tap into the Patreon link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. I might even do a mastermind session on my entire setup and how it is that I'm able to run this whole thing. I'm a one-person entity. So everything you see me running right now, it's only me. It's only me. I run everything on my own. I don't need no help.
Was just doing local radio for 10 years, covering the Dolphins.
Gotta put him on, bro.
Local guys. And then you got Fred T, legend.
Right.
In football. Like, he should be a Hall of Famer. Talk about the guy need to be a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
He should be a Hall of Famer.
He should.
Okay.
He should.
So then you go to Fred T, and it's like, but Fred T ain't really doing media.
Right.
I mean, I think he's calling some stuff locally in Jacksonville for the Jaguars. And Reggie was doing some for NFL Network. So they were like, yo, just change up the squad. Because back then it was all about big names, big names, big names.
Right.
And I said, no, I gave them my word.
Right.
So I can't do that. Then I had other people come in. I want to buy we need to own the IP. We need to do this and that. I was like, no, I said no probably 1,000 times to some deals that, majority would say yes to. So after that season, we didn't accomplish the goal. The goal was to sell the show.
Right.
So after that season.
So the goal was to sell the show. Shout out to Neighborhood Spider. I appreciate that. The goal was to sell the show, right? Now, if the goal was to sell the show, in which basically he did a deal with a lot of the dudes in which it sounded like it was majority handshake deals, but either way, a handshake deal is a deal. A verbal agreement is still a deal. Your ability to be able to prove that you did that agreement is a completely different conversation, but an agreement is agreement, all right? And he said, listen, after the first year or the first season of us doing that show, we wasn't able to sell it, and so he's about to go into the whole idea of it behind that.
I sat down with my agent at WME, know nothing about like the production world, right? It was only House of Athlete, 5-year roadmap business plan. So I sit down with my guys there to represent like some of the biggest names in sports, production companies, and they sell shows all the time. Like, yo, I'm going to continue with this. How should I approach it? So they gave me all the stuff like, this is how you bring in production. This is how you rev share. This is how you do X, Y, and Z. Okay. So I go, we have a meeting. Hey guys,
I could have taught him that.
Here's the information I got from WME and my agency. I advise you guys to do the same, because I don't want anybody to look at this and say like I'm trying to take. I didn't even use the words taking advantage because it wasn't even near. Right. It was just like, yo, I just want y'all to make sure that y'all comfortable with this. So do y'all work. I did my work, and this is what they're saying is industry standard. Right. It was just an offer sheet to continue for another season. I couldn't ask them for season 2 to do another season for free. Right. So what ended up happening is like you had 2.
So these dudes was basically working for free. Brandon Marshall was putting the money up. Okay. Everybody else that's on the platform is basically working for free. So they putting their time in with the anticipation that they all gonna bust that down equally. Right. After I'm assuming Brandon Marshall get a return on whatever it is that he invested. Then they all bust it down equally. But it was his idea. It was his inception based off of what he's communicating. Now remember, these are people that he's doing business with friends, creating a platform, content creation. Let's continue.
One, you can invest, right? And we rev share. Or 2, you can take a per episode fee.
Right.
Now, this is key, y'all. And the reason that it's key is because it's changing the complete dynamic of the conversation. Now, why is it changing the dynamic of the conversation? Because in the beginning of this conversation, he said, listen, after season 1, the goal was to make sure that we basically sell the show, bust it down equally, and then we go on our separate ways. So that was what was being communicated. And a lot of y'all really need to start paying attention to what's being communicated, because if you do, then you can start catching what's being communicated, all right? In the very beginning, he said, listen, the goal was to sell it. We're going to all bust it down. And I'm assuming after he get a recoup on what his initial investment was. And we all going to get paid as a result of it. Then he went and he started linking up with his agents and all of these other people and what's industry standard, all right? And now he's saying, listen, the terms is going to change, y'all. Y'all can invest with me and then we can revenue share. Or y'all can take a per episode amount based off of this set fee or whatever it is that you negotiate. Woo, when the money start getting introduced into the conversation and y'all see it's all listen. For most of y'all gonna start a podcast with your friends. You're gonna do a YouTube channel with your friends and all of that other type of stuff. And y'all not even gonna have a 1 year, 2 year run. You're not even gonna have a 1 year, 2 year run. That's just a fact. Your run is going to be limited because the minute that one paycheck, listen, you can have, what is it, $100? It's been so long. $100 is the threshold that you start making money. So you get 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 watch hours, and then you make at least $100. You're going to get that payment, that monthly AdSense check. Ain't even going to be no real money. Let's say y'all make $1,000 that month, right? Which is very, very, very hard to do. A lot of people don't understand how difficult it is to grow a platform. And then after you grow the platform, you got to figure out how to monetize it. Because I'm going to be honest with you. Most people that got 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80,000, even 100,000 subscribers, they not making no money. This is a fact. And if you want to tap into the Patreon, I will show you the receipts. Most people that have 100,000 or more subscribers, they are not making no money. They not making no real money. They can't quit their job if they wanted to. That's a fact, though. They not even making six figures a year. Real talk. Now, I can show you how to get that bag. It's a completely different conversation. Even my dog, Anthony Brian Logan. Shout out to Anthony Brian Logan. He a part of the Patreon, too. Anthony Brian Logan, my dog. He tell you. He said it on his platform to his people. He said, listen, I subscribe to Anton's Patreon, and it's a lot of game in there that I was not familiar with. This dude got some shit that blew my mind. And he leveraged that, and he's using it. Shout out to my dog, Anthony Brian Logan. I got the best Patreon on the fucking internet. That's a fact. That's a fact, though. Ain't nobody fucking with me on. But basically what Brandon Marshall was saying is, yo, listen. Now that I started putting a lot of money in there and it's costing me money in order to invest in these platforms and all of this other type of stuff, and I'm trying to sell the show, which basically tells me that they're not getting no money on YouTube. They not getting no money on YouTube. That's a fact. The money that they making from content creation, I don't care how many subscribers they got. I don't care how many views that they getting. They not even doing enough to even cover the costs and the expenses associated with paying the talent, getting the production possible. They probably got editors. They don't know how to do none of this stuff themselves. It's a fact. 1,000% a fact. And so he's saying, listen, now the conversation changed from, listen, we just going to sell the show, bust it down, to, listen, I'll pay y'all per episode revenue share, or y'all can invest in the platform. And we're going to do it that way. Let's continue.
Channing said, bro, this is my dog. He's like, yo, you like the risk stuff. I don't like that. Like, I just give me my per episode fee. Reggie Wayne, up until like the day before we about to shoot season 2, he's like, I might be going to Indy doing this and that. And at the last moment, I called Ocho. I'm like, Ocho, would you do this? Right. And I was like, bro, I got X amount per episode. Like, fuck yeah.
Right.
So, just because people are making money doesn't mean that they all look at it from a business perspective. Ocho was like, yeah, skip it. Give me this amount per episode. This person said, yeah, I'll take this amount per episode. I'll take this amount per episode. This is what everybody is doing. They come from getting a paycheck every week or whatever like that. Right? This is what's being communicated. It went from busting it down from a show perspective to I'm the owner and I'm willing to give you this amount per episode and this is how much money I'm investing in the platform. Okay, let's continue.
Boom. And then Fred was the only one who was like, yo, like I believe in equity, I believe in ownership. So long story short, right, that's the origin story, that's how it was. Season 2, we go and then we break through. Boom.
Right.
Major. And then so everybody, we're starting to button up stuff. We're trying more deals, looking at NASCAR, looking at certain things. And then, Fred comes, he's like, yo, let's have a meeting. We schedule a meeting, didn't come, scheduled it again. Then we start going through it. And he and I could not align because he kept going back to, 25% of the company. And I'm looking.
Now, when a dude decides, think about it, what's happening. Listen, these are dudes that made millions of dollars in a football career. Only one guy that was on the platform said, nah, I want the equity part of it, right? Everybody else want a per show episode, want a per show per diem, basically. And now when they start getting into the weeds in it, my man said, listen, I want a 25% cut of the company. This is what's being communicated. We talking business and friendships.
And that, like, I'm like, bro, like I invested $500K at this point. Like,
at the time, he said, bro, look, man, I invested $500,000 into this product. So are y'all telling me that these platforms are getting a return of the equivalent of 500? They gambling. They're gambling on the idea that they'll be able to get a show and sell it over into the network, and then they're going to get a big bag as a result of it. When you see these platforms and you see these shows, look. Shannon Sharp's Club Shay Shay, I'm guessing, I don't know 100% for sure. Club Shay Shay is backed by Fox Sports and Entertainment, if I'm not mistaken, which is the same platform that is backing Undisputed by Skip and Shannon. Let me say it again. Shannon Sharp's, allegedly, if I'm not mistaken, is backed by Fox Sports and Entertainment. Well, Anton, how do you know this? Because I have to deal with them on a regular basis. See, a lot of people get copyright strikes and stuff like that when they review Shannon Sharp content, especially with regard to even like the Steve Harvey interview. I did the Mandisi's interview and all of this other type of stuff, right? I'm giving y'all real game in real life. I worked behind the scenes in order to be able to review that content. See, y'all don't know. We in a whole nother league over here. Just because you see me and you only see me don't mean that we don't have a lot of stuff working on the back end. And so when you see my videos, they're still monetized. I don't have to remove them. I can still have my Shannon Sharp interviews with the review videos with the Steve, what's his name? Steve Harvey. I don't have those problems because I went through the necessary steps in order to ensure that I could still review those videos or whatever. I have the permissions. I have all of that stuff, right? So I knew who I had to go through the steps in order to even be able to have certain conversations, right? But my point is that when you see these things that's happening on the internet, you just watching the video as a fan, you don't know who's behind who and who's the person that's actually backing a lot of what is being put together on the tail end. A lot of these dudes don't own their own shit. They the face. That's it. They a face. They the host. They a face. They do a phenomenal job. They good at it. They probably get a big bag as a result of it. But the reality is that, shout out to Jake Fever. I appreciate you, bro. And let me give a shout out to all of the new Patreon members. But the reality is that the business side of it, most of these guys is just getting a bag. They just getting a check. They don't actually own the overwhelming majority of those platforms. Let's continue.
Like the numbers change.
Right.
And so we could never align there. And again, going back to how it's supposed to be, right? Like, how did you contribute to it? And I always say this, and I say this a couple of times, take the emotion out of money.
Yep.
Right? Because I'm sitting in the office and we're having some...
Now we taking the emotion out of the money, right? Now we looking at it purely from a business perspective. It ain't no more friends, huh?
Some tense conversations, some tense moments. And I'm looking at him like, bro, I done invested everything.
Right.
Right. And so there was a couple times where I'm like, nah, that Pittsburgh B Marsh that you talking about came out.
That's the B Marsh you want to see.
You know what I'm saying? But that's the learning lesson for me.
Right.
Right. Like even in those moments, you know, you always got to operate from a professional standpoint. Right. Can't go in no meeting and say, man, fuck that, man, I invested all the money, da 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 da. Like, you know, but I'm getting frustrated because we're having these conversations for 6-7 months.
Right.
Like it wasn't just like we were literally trying to get on the same page.
Right.
And so for me, that was another opportunity where I could have done things differently, was in those most heated, tense moments, kept my poise.
Right.
Right. So I think it's all about the business. And then I think at the end of the day, you know, I had a few people ask, you know, say like, well, if you paying me this, how much are you getting? Right.
Now we pocket watching. Shout out to my dog pocket watching with JT. Now we pocket watching. Now people want to know how much you getting because this is what you agreed to as far as the per episode amount that you gotten paid. And listen, and this is how friends become frenemies and breakups happen. Everybody think that they smart. Everybody think that they a businessman. Everybody didn't went to YouTube University or Instagram University, and somebody told them that they deserve equity and ownership and all of this other type of stuff. And now we want to start deep diving into the numbers. All right.
And so it just got real messy at the end. And then at the end, they looked at, well, I could potentially go make more money doing my own thing. And so it is tense still, you know what I mean? But like, I try to approach it more like I try to get the information out there because we live in a world now where everybody wants to know.
Right.
And it's important for us to be real and authentic. But what I'm trying not to do is fuel the negativity. What I'm trying not to do is talk bad about this person, that person, that person. I'm going to take accountability for my part in it. Right. But one thing I know for sure is where I come from, you know what I mean? Like, I'm always good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't play no games.
Right.
To the point where that's what gets me in trouble. Mm-hmm. I'm too real. Right. I'm too authentic.
Right.
I'm willing to go there.
Right.
Right. But that don't win in ball all the time. That don't win in business.
Nope.
Nah.
Right. And so I say that because when it comes down to what we talk about and what we doing and what is a fair deal, what is a right deal, I'm always right there.
Right.
So bad business be bad, that bad. No. I invested $10 million to this point in my company.
He all in, right? I invested $10 million up to this point in my company. It's a lot of money, y'all. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. When we talking about money and we talking about bag chasing and we talking about revenue and we talking about splits and what people think they worth versus what it is that you actually is investing in the platform, the question always comes back to ROI, return on investment. How are you adding value into this thing? Are you more valuable without me or are you more valuable with me? Right? Let's use real numbers for a second. Or dummy numbers, but use a real life scenario, okay? Let's just go ahead and rewrite this. If, let's say you busting down $20,000 a month, right? Let's say you generating $20,000 a month, right? And that's as a result of everything all in. Production costs, and I'm trying to keep it more relevant to a number that's manageable in order to understand it from a C student's perspective, right? But let's just say you got a show or you got a YouTube channel and you're generating revenue. And no, let's use a bigger number. Let's say 50,000. Let's say after all in, all of the costs, the revenue is $50,000 a month. But now you got to pay the editors. And you got to do clips, and then let's say you're using some for promotion, and then let's say you got to pay the talent, right? And then let's say now you have another owner in there or whatever, so on and so forth. And so the revenue is going to be based off of the net. The net is what you have after you pay all of the expenses for that month. So after you get done paying whatever it is that you agreed to pay somebody per show, regardless of how much money you make, if you didn't make no money that month, you still got to pay what it is that you agreed to pay the people, the editors, the talent, whatever, so on and so forth. So it's largely in your interest to generate the most revenue possible, whether it be through sponsorships, whether it be through AdSense revenue, whatever it is. If you monetizing it on multiple different platforms, you have or you generate, whether you generate $50,000, $100,000, $20,000, $1,000 a month, you have to pay that amount of money out of your pocket because nobody gives a fuck about what you think they want their money at the end of the month. Okay? That's the risk that you take as a business owner. That extends beyond whatever it is that you're talking about, restaurant business, content creation, whatever. People want their money at the end of the month. Okay? You're not asking your job, hey, how did y'all do this quarter? You just making sure you check your bank account every week or every 2 weeks on the days that you're supposed to get paid. Right? So now when you become an owner, you become more responsible for whatever it is that's happening across the board. Now, when you take that into consideration, okay, the question that you have to ask yourself as a business person is this. When you start evaluating the talent that's around you, you have to ask yourself this. Are we more valuable with you or are we more valuable without you? That's the thing that very few people ask themselves when they're having conversations, when they're in negotiations, when they're going back and forth, when they get mad, when they're saying it's mine, or whatever the percentages is, or whatever, so on and so forth. You have to ask yourself the question, am I more valuable with you or without you? And when you can ask yourself that question, and then you're looking at it from a business perspective instead of looking at it emotionally, often at times, 9 times out of 10, you're going to win out. 9 times out of 10, you're going to win out. All right. So I think that was a phenomenal interview on his part in which he broke down a lot of information that maybe we all can leverage and use in order to continue to make ourselves successful and ensure that we are absolutely positively in the best spaces possible.